I'm delighted to be here with Anthony Thomson, who's been in the financial services industry for 30 years and was more recently the founder and chairman of Metrobank. He's chairman of the National Skills Academy for Financial Services, a charity that helps companies with training and brings new people into the sector. He's also co-founder and chairman of the Financial Services Forum, and also set up Money Spinners, a charity which through cycling has raised a lot of money for worthy causes. You left school at 17. What were your earliest motivations and ambitions?
Well, I kind of left school at 17, but whether I would have been allowed to stay on any longer was a moot point. I wasn't really academically orientated, and I was terrible at maths, so I just couldn't see the point in staying on. So it was less a case of being motivated by anything in particular than just being unmotivated by what I was doing. It was interesting as my life went on and I became more interested in business, how I suddenly developed an interest in maths. And I now quite enjoy reading balance sheets and profit and loss accounts.
And so was there you say when you left school, maybe the motivation was more for leaving school than to whatever was next, but was there a who or a what that influenced you at that stage?
I think like most people, I thought I wanted to be rich. I thought money was what motivated me. And indeed, in some of my very early business incarnations, I thought I was driven by money. But the reality is, I discovered that money is important to me, but it's not the most important thing. And I know a number of people who are very, very wealthy, and most of them, in my experience, are quite dysfunctional. And to me, I'd rather have a little bit less money, but a bit more balance in my life.
You've got a very straightforward and I suppose refreshing approach to life, to business, and it seems to be about doing the right thing. Does that sometimes cause challenges or difficulties?
I think quite the reverse. It is very important to have clarity around what you want to do. And what's very, very important to me, and one of the precepts by which I judge any business I'm going to become involved in is the reason we're doing it to give the customer, whoever that customer is, and there have been various customers, various stages of my life. Are we about giving the customer a better product or a better service or a better experience, or are we in it for the money? Yeah. And if the answer is we're in it for the money, we're in it for the wrong reasons. I believe absolutely passionately that profit is a byproduct of doing something well for the customer. It's not the reason you go into business. And when choosing the people I'm going to work with, I'm always very interested in their motivations, because if they're interested in doing it for money, no matter how skilled or talented or experienced they are, I won't work with them. I want people who share my value set, or for whom it is a common value set, not just my values. That profit is absolutely the byproduct of doing something well for the customer.
Yeah, which is great. And you've been, I suppose, famously known to say that you think the banks and certainly the financial services sector went after profit and profit hunting, utterly at the expense of the customer.
Yeah, my sense is that sort of UK PLC in general and the banks in particular have forgotten about the customer. They just think that they're in business to make money. And if that is the case, they're not looking to the needs of the customer. Now, don't get me wrong, I like to make money. I like to live a pleasant life, but the profit has to be a byproduct of doing something well. And I think if you create a business on that basis and manage it effectively, it can be very profitable. I have no problem with people making lots and lots of money, but it has to be a byproduct of doing something well.
What are, in that vein, what are the things that perhaps businesses, UK PLC, as you say, need to be doing a bit differently now?
So they've got to be thinking about the customer. Ultimately, the customer is the person who pays all of our bills. And a lot of people talk about the customer, but they really pay lip service to them. I hear people saying, yeah, of course, customers are at the centre of everything that we do. And then their actions and their behaviours belie that. And a classic example in the banking world, and I don't want to talk too much sound like a banker, but in banking, all of the big banks will make statements. Some of them even have manifestos about how well they're going to treat the customer, how they put the customer first. And then they reward the people who serve the customers with sales targets, or for hitting sales targets rather. Yeah. And I'm from Newcastle, so I tend to see things in black and white, very simply. And I go, if you're going to set somebody a sales target, and then you're going to reward them for hitting that sales target, and potentially penalise them for not hitting that sales target, there's a fair chance they're going to sell something. So when we set up Metrobank, one of the things we did was to try and align our behaviours with our vision. So we said the customer's at the centre of everything that we do. Therefore, every person who interacts with a customer has one target and one target only, which is to give great customer service, great customer satisfaction. And that's what we measured, and that's what we rewarded, not sales.
Which is great. I mean, it's all a bit about people, isn't it? And is that why you've said that perhaps the 5 years that you spent at Metrobank were perhaps some of the most exciting you had in, 30 odd years, whatever?
Well, I could, but it would sound somewhat pious and probably be untrue. I mean, I think building new businesses is the most fun you can have with your clothes on. I absolutely love it. And for me, and I've, as you've alluded to, I've started a number of businesses with varying degrees of success over the years. The thing that, or the time at which I have been my happiest, is generally up to around 50 people. So you know everybody, you know them all by name, you all come together, you have a very clear shared goal of what you're trying to achieve. And when you get to 500 people or 1,000 people, it just gets that bit more difficult. And also, when the business is small, every decision you are making is influencing its long-term future. If there's only 2 of you, you're making 50% of the decisions. When there's 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 people, and they're all making decisions, some big, some small, at the coalface, you have less influence on the overall business.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that in mind around influencing business, I suppose, what have been the biggest challenges that perhaps you faced in your career, and how have you learned from that and take that forward?
What constitutes success? What makes people successful? And I think there is no identikit for entrepreneurs. You know far more than I do, and I'm sure in the interviews you've done that many have very different motivations. Some, everybody thinks of Richard Branson as the archetypal entrepreneur, but there are people who've had brilliant business ideas. There are people who've come from an academic background. There are people who had that kind of hallelujah moment in the bath, or saw some tremendous insight, market opportunity. For me, I think it's just been a bit about getting up every day and going to work. So for me, it's about treating success and failure equally. You have good days, you get up, you go to work. You have bad days, you get up, you go to work.
And is that what drives you? I suppose part of that excitement about, I don't know, not necessarily knowing what a day is going to bring, but then you talked about the fact that sometimes those smaller enterprises, when it's up to 50, they are more exciting because they tend to be, you don't always tend to know what's coming.
It's a good question. I think I'm more or less equally motivated by desire to succeed and fear of failure. And sometimes the fear of failure drives me more than the desire to succeed. And I've had this conversation with other very successful people. And you look at them and you go, wow, you're just brilliant. You're at the top of your game. Everybody loves what you're doing. And you talk to them and go, I'm just scared somebody's going to come along and say you're a fraud and take it all away from me. So there's a kind of yin and yang to it.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, that concept of fear, and there is some research out there that says that every human being is driven by either the fear of success or the fear of failure. I don't think it's quite as black and white as that, but there's certainly that, I suppose, need for people to overcome that fear of failure in order to do and push yourself out into a maybe uncomfortable scenario.
And I think people have got to be clear what they really want. It's back to my earlier point about, do you really want to be rich? Do you really, really want to be rich? Because one can be most of the things that one wants to be in life if one's prepared to pay a price for it. Now, I would probably never have been playing football for Newcastle United, but I may have been a reasonably good footballer had I been prepared to give up going out drinking in the evening or give up girlfriends and be prepared to get up every morning and train. A lot of people like the idea of success, but they're not prepared to pay the price to get there. And in setting up businesses, and you'll have seen this many, many times, people will come with brilliant business plans, fantastic ideas, and you go, okay, what are you going to put into it? They go, well, me. I go, well, you put your house in or some money? No, I want somebody else to put the money in. Why should somebody else take the risk if you're not prepared to share in it, your success? So I think people have to be really clear on what is motivating.
Because you've taken a number of those risks, haven't you, and made those sacrifices.
Yeah, I've tended, my general view of these things is to take small risks often rather than bet the farm on any single thing. Yeah. And you could say, well, setting up a bank was a big risk. But you actually break it down. There's only 4 or 5 constituent parts to it. Can we get authorised by the regulator? Can we raise the money? Because banks are very IT and infrastructurally driven, can we create the IT that's necessary? And can we persuade customers to come to us? And then you go, well, there's only 4 things I've got to get right. Of course, beneath each one of those, there's 50 things, and beneath each one of those 50 things, there's 50 things. Yeah. But just break it down into the constituent parts. Say, can I deliver these?
Yeah. For someone that perhaps is watching this or thinking about what they want to do next, setting up their own business, I don't know, in a role that they want to do something different, or maybe they want to get fit, or maybe they want to travel somewhere across the world, what would you say is the thing that perhaps they need to think about differently or do differently, that first little step?
Of course, everybody's different.
Of course,
but in terms of business, I think you have to believe in what it is that you're doing. You have to believe passionately in what it is that you're doing or what it is that you want to do. And I have addressed both external audiences and internal audiences, and I said, if you don't believe in what you are doing today, you shouldn't be here. You should be doing something different. And if you work for me, that might seem an odd thing for me to say, that if you don't believe in it, go and work somewhere else. But it's actually the best thing for you, and ultimately it will be the best thing for me. And if you're in a job and you don't believe in it, you don't care passionately about it, go and do something else. Life's too short.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're a long time dead. Depends on your religious beliefs, of course. In my case,
there's another discussion there.
I think we're a long time dead.
I suppose allowing yourself to believe truly in what you do, but also allowing the passion to connect with that. And then, as you say, people do then often achieve quite extraordinary things.
There's a great expression, I think it's from the Scottish Himalayan expedition, which is, if you believe it, it is possible to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just got to believe it.
Great believer in that. Some of your peers have given you a mantle, which I quite like. They've said you're a financial wizard, gifted entrepreneur with an intoxicating mix of risk-taking and pure business savvy.
That might relate to my wine intake, the intoxicating.
We can take that either way. But of course it does lead me to say, well, what's next? There must be something out there that you're...
Well, I'm pleased that you talked to those people, because I'm sure there would have been another group of people you could have talked to that would have said something entirely different. I don't know, that I am self-opinionated, that I'm driven, that I'm not easy to work with, that so I'm glad that you spoke to those people and not the other one. What am I going to do next?
You've now given that a nice counterbalance, so that's good.
I'm a marketer by background. I guess I'm an entrepreneur by preference. I like starting businesses, and we talked about that. But I'm a marketer by background. I like looking for marketplace insights. So back in 2007, the insight that drove me to start Metrobank was the degree of dissatisfaction that customers had with their banks. And the banks seemed to think that it was a price-driven market, a rate-driven market, that the only thing that mattered to customers was price. Well, we know from any other sector you look at, price is only one determinant. Yeah. So value is generally what drives people. And in banking terms, it might be about service, it might be about convenience, transparency, consistency, about treating existing customers as well as new customers. There's a whole bunch of things, an amalgam of value for people. And that was clearly an opportunity I saw that was missing in the market at the time. So I look for opportunities, or opportunities that other people have identified that I can add some value to. One of which is in the challenges that we faced in Metrobank was around IT and infrastructure. It's very difficult and very expensive to build out. There's going to be a lot of new banks over the next 4 or 5 years, driven by changing the regulation, government desire to see more consumer choice, more competition, more credit for businesses. So I see a real opportunity in the IT and infrastructure space to help these people get to market more quickly. So that's one thing that I'm doing. And I think that we set out with Metrobank to revolutionise banking. And I think I might have one more revolution left in me.
I'm sure you have, which is very exciting. And that's something that we can't talk about yet, I assume?
Well, I'm working on it. It's a work in progress.
And so I suppose that drive, that curiosity, that interest in business and
I really don't know what drives me. And I think one can spend an awful lot of time trying to figure it out. Time that could more usefully spent just be getting on and doing it. Work-life balance is very important to me. Having a life outside of work is very important. Sometimes I get the balance right, sometimes I get it wrong, but I try and keep it in mind all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, as some people say, it's all life, isn't it? You know, we have to make the choice as to when we're doing certain things and when we're doing others. But actually,
I don't think my wife would like me at home 5 days a week.
It's interesting, just I suppose listening to you, sometimes I think when people want to find that passion or find that purpose or even the drive, sometimes it's maybe the curiosity to try different things and just, you know, be inquisitive and ask questions, or, you know, even if it's about, you know, what could I do next, or what might be the next promotion in my organisation, just that ability to think, well, let's ask the question.
I've always been very fortunate. I've had people who have been mentors to me, and I'm a great believer in having people whose advice I value, who I can talk to about things. One of which is a chap called Ken Bell, who is now in his 80s. And I still value his opinion. I still talk to him regularly. And we still have exactly the same conversation, which goes along the lines of, well, what are we going to do when we grow up? Fantastic. And I guess I'm always looking for what I'm going to do when I grow up.
Brilliant. I like that. Everybody can take that away for sure. And what would you like to be known for? There's many things here.
Oh, the tall, handsome Anthony Thomson would be nice, but it's unlike, well, I'm tall. I might get that one. It is interesting. I've been asked a number of times, why did I start Metrobank? And part of it was about building a monument. And it's about creating something that will outlive me, something that is a legacy, something which my kids hopefully can be proud of, and hopefully, if I have grandchildren, can be proud of, something we say, my dad and my granddad was part of building something which has some lasting values.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your inspirations. And I think
it's been my pleasure,
there's
Kate.
lots there that people can use. Thank you so much.
Thank you.